This is Taking Stock on Bloomberg. I'm Pim Fox. Now, where the experts put their money to work, that's a good reason to go and hunt for some expertise. Can you bet on the banks, and are they safe? What about technology? It's all over the map, of course. That's why we have Colin Berthoud. He is the director of youDevise. Colin, it's good to have you back. Explain a little bit about the service for those that don't understand it. This is institutional brokerage services who are, well, go ahead, you tell the story.
These are all the main institutional brokers advising a selection of clients, tends to be their largest clients, on specific stock ideas. Go long this stock, go short another stock. What we found is that they'll tend to recommend more stocks long if the market is about to go up. They'll tend to recommend stocks short if they think the market's going down. So there's a correlation between at an aggregated level between the number of longs and the number of shorts going into the service. And
is it worth noting, though, that these are recommendations that someone is paying money to actually receive? This isn't just someone putting out the research and papering the street with it.
There's hundreds of millions of commission being paid for these ideas.
Okay, so at the very least, someone believes that the recommendations they're getting are worthwhile, and then you'd think they would follow up on it.
Absolutely right.
All right, so what are some of the trends that you've seen looking at all of the flow of research?
Well, at the top level, in the last few weeks, we've actually seen the sentiment bumping up and down. So we're seeing it moving between about 45% and 55%.
Sentiment for what?
Sentiment overall. So
okay.
the number of longs versus the number of shorts, we've seen it moving in a range, which is a fairly tight range. Late last year, for example, we were seeing very strong falls in sentiment. This year it's been going in this range, 45 to 55%. Just in the last day or so, we've seen the sentiment coming up. So it's been going close to the 55% level. Yesterday it was a very strong sentiment again during the day today, but has come off towards the end of the day. So by the end of the day, we're still worldwide, we're still very positive by the end of the day, but not as positive as we were halfway through the day.
Sounds almost as if people can't make up their minds completely.
What it really means, I think, is that the brokers are saying, go long this stock. If the stock goes up, take your profit, move on to the next one that looks a little bit low. So they're not saying long-term move into something, long-term move out of something. It's kind of take the profit when it's
opportunistic,
there.
perhaps.
Yes. There's a very good example here where Goldman Sachs today, actually, and yesterday, there was a lot of long sentiment building up to their results announcements, and then yesterday people began to take profits. Today we've seen quite a strong trend of people saying there's probably better opportunities out there than Goldman Sachs right now.
And what is your work talking about in terms of, let's say, geographical focus? Because I know that North America was one of the areas you were looking at.
So North America was particularly strong sentiment yesterday and today. So across the whole of the TIM, the sentiment was quite strong, but North America was particularly strong yesterday and this morning. As I say, coming off slightly today. Another stock we looked at today was Dell.
I was going to ask you about that because that seemed almost like an anomaly based on the report.
So what we've seen on Dell is actually a fairly even split today. So there's a lot of activity. A lot of people are putting in ideas on Dell or closing ideas on Dell. But they're split right now after the results on whether they should be going long or short. So we're seeing, in this case, institutional brokers are divided on what they should be doing, what they think their clients should be doing on Dell.
What's the track record of following what the institutional brokerage community says?
Of 4,000 people who are contributing, 65% beat their relevant regional benchmark. So 65% of all the contributors are actually beating the benchmark by 15%.
Okay. All right. We're going to continue the conversation more with Colin Berthoud. We're going to talk about a steelmaker, ArcelorMittal, find out what the institutional sentiment is there. Also, we're going to talk about a company. We know about it. We're going to tell you why some of them are long, why some of them are short, and what Colin's work tells him for the future. This is Taking Stock on Bloomberg. This is Taking Stock on Bloomberg. I'm Pim Fox. Dell Computers says it isn't going to acquire companies such as Acer or other smaller PC makers that sell low-margin machines. The CFO saying that the focus is on getting that profit picture up, not going after market share. Colin Berthoud, he's the director of youDevise. You were talking about Dell, and you brought up a very interesting point, because my question was, when you look at the institutional brokerages that are supplying all these recommendations, you build all this from the ground up, meaning it's individual stock recommendations. It's not gee, we like technology, we don't like materials.
Yes. So what our institutional brokers are doing are recommending specific stocks. Go long this stock today, now, instantly if you can, because it's going to go up. There's a catalyst event that means it will rise in the next day to 3 weeks.
Whatever time frame is.
Whatever the time frame is, but now is the moment. So a lot of people going long Goldman Sachs is a good, easy example there prior to their results. Now they're saying take your profit. So,
and with Dell, what are they saying? You say this is strong, right?
So Dell is a long within the service, so there are more people who are recommending Dell long. Recent activity on Dell is balanced, so there's been a lot of activity after results. Some people saying, okay, now's the time to get into Dell. Some people saying this is not the time to get into Dell. So there's a balance on Dell, specifically on recent activity, but overall it's a long stock. People like Dell.
All right, and what about ArcelorMittal? This is almost the opposite, right? Because I mean, it says mostly in the last 48 hours they're saying going long.
Yes.
Previous to that, it was a lot of longs, a lot of shorts, but balancing each other out.
Yes. The longest sectors in the last 48 hours have been materials and industrials. So we've seen a decrease in IT. So technology was a strong sector. Just in the last 48 hours, technology has come off. There's been a rise in materials and industrials. ArcelorMittal has strong base in materials, and we're seeing a lot of long ideas going in on ArcelorMittal.
All right, now to tease this section, I was talking about a stock you're going to bring in. Let's give it away. Dry ships. What are you learning about dry ships? Because this is sometimes used as a proxy for global trade.
Dry ships is not a stock I know personally, but we're seeing a lot of activity in dry ships. To make it into our hot list, it has to pass two barriers. First of all, there has to be a lot of activity in that particular stock. Secondly, there has to be a lot of activity relative to itself. So there has to be more activity in that stock than there has been recently, as well as being an active stock within the service. So there's a lot of activity in dry ships, and it's long activity.
Long activity, and there's a lot of it.
And there's a lot of it.
What about in the sectors? You mentioned materials. Are you seeing a lot of long activity in materials?
There's a 10% rise in the sentiment on materials. So across the whole of the TIM worldwide, there's a 10% greater increase on the long side on materials, and industrials the same. There's an increase, not quite to that extent, but there's an increase in industrial stocks as well. So,
what kind of time frame are you talking about here? I mean, is this hours, days, weeks?
The sentiment we're looking at is over the last week, but building up. So it's an average over the last 7 days, but taking the most recent day, the most recent 24 hours, as the most weight. So there's a lot of activity. If we're seeing a lot of long activity in a stock today and yesterday, that will build up to a long signal today.
Could we ever get into the ironic position where the people that are using this information, judging what institutional brokerage firms are saying, are the very people that are actually buying the information from the institutional brokerage firms? So in a sense, they're chasing their own tail?
There's already a correlation, so we can see the statistical correlation between the sentiment that we see in the TIM and the next day and 1 to 3 days in terms of the movement in the stock index. So we can already see a correlation. What the cause is and what the effect is, we don't break out, but perhaps.
So maybe like it reconfirms whatever the institutional recommendations are that they're receiving.
Indeed. And remember, we're building this up from the ground up. So really, no one is trying to predict the market as a whole. What they're saying is, this stock we think is going to go up, this stock we think is going to go down, and it simply adds up statistically in an interesting way to a sentiment figure that actually does have a correlation with the way the market moves.
So all the stock brokerage firm upgrades and downgrades, they would be factored into all of the information that you have.
These are generally the salespeople who are making the recommendation based on what the rest of the institution is thinking. So they take the actionable end. They say, now is the moment to get into this stock that we may have recommended going overweight. Now's the moment to come out of the stock that we said overweight a couple of weeks ago on the research side. Now's the moment to conclude your holding in that stock. So they're trying to say, time it very specifically. It's not a long-term call. It tends to be, on average, about 3 weeks. This is the moment to get in. This is the moment to get out.
All right, 3 weeks. That's well, I guess in this day's market, that's a lifetime in many cases.
The time scales come down over time. Yes.
All right. I want to thank you very much, Colin Berthoud, coming in from youDevise, sharing this information coming from all the institutional brokerage firms. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.